Hello and welcome to another Writerly Witterings. My name is Michael Jex. I'm the author of some 44 books, and I'm running this series of videos to try to help students with their essay writing. Now, I have been looking at different aspects of work over the last few weeks, so I've covered some aspects of looking at essays, I've covered some different bits of software. I will be going into other software packages later, but it occurred to me today that it would probably be worthwhile going back to first principles, because quite a few students are going to be coming up against deadlines for essays now. And so I thought, okay, let's go through the process of how you actually write an essay. Because the sad fact is, what happens all too often is that a student will be given an essay to write, they'll run off to the library, sit in the library and get huge amounts of information, and then try to compress all of that information into one coherent essay, and it often doesn't work. But the more information you get, the longer you sit there in the library getting more and more references, more and more bits of information, the more the library acts like a comfort blanket, because while you're there you're working and you feel as though you're justifying your existence. But of course you're not, because you're not writing an essay, you're sitting there gathering information. And with all too many students, they will sit in the library until one day before the essay is due in. They'll rush home and try to formulate some sort of logical essay out of all the information they've gathered, and then they get very upset when they get a B or a C when they're looking at their report, at their marks. So what I thought would be worthwhile doing was just looking at what my approach would be in terms of writing an essay. Now, this is based on my own experience as a writer for quite a few years, but it's also based on my experience at Exeter University teaching. There were medical students, legal law students, business management students, there were English students, historians, all types of different people, but they all basically had the same issue when it came to writing essays. So what is the Jex approach to writing an essay? Yes, you need to go to the library. Yes, you need to find your references. But before you do that, first of all, decide roughly what your essay is going to be. You've been given a question, you've been given something to investigate, something to explore, something to argue. So consider that before looking up any references. What is your own personal opinion about the question or the response that you should be giving? When you've done that, write out what your response is, and that is an outline conclusion. Just put down roughly what you think would make sense in terms of responding. Once you've done that, you need to have a good idea about how long it's going to take you to work on this essay. I don't mean doing the research, I mean the little things, such as when you're writing an essay, yes, you've got to do research, but then you've got to plan out how the essay is going to work. You've got to leave time for the writing. Now, for me, writing 1,500 words is easy, that's an afternoon's work. For you, who are not necessarily so used to writing, it could take 3-4 days. You've got to allocate time for editing, so you've got to go back and make sure you've spelt everything correctly, make sure the grammar's right, make sure that you haven't forgotten to put in some full stops and things, make sure it all flows. And then when you've done all that, you've edited and so on, you need to read it aloud. This is absolutely vital, because you will miss almost every error that you've made when you're just reading it on a screen. If you read something on a screen, you will miss over 60% of all of the issues that are there. Print it out, because when you've got it on a sheet of paper, you will see more typos. But also read aloud, because when you see words on a page, whether it's on the screen or on a sheet of paper in front of you, no matter how careful you are, you will see on the page what you thought you had written. So you do miss a lot of typos. But when you read it and you get your mouth moving at the same time, you'll suddenly find that you're stumbling where there are errors. You may see it, and in your mind it might look perfectly correct, but your mouth will slow down and stumble. So it's a strange thing, but all authors know this. So you need to leave time to read your whole essay aloud. If it's 1,500 words, that's going to take you a fair bit of reading. Then when you've done that, you need to go through on a final edit, putting all of the corrections for the typos and so on back in, and then proof check it one last time just to make sure that everything's perfect before you give it into your tutor. And when I say proof checking, I mean, for example, if you've left a nickname for your tutor because you couldn't remember what his or her name was, make sure you've taken out the nickname and put the correct name in there, please. It's the sort of thing that I've seen done before. So with all of those aspects to be done, you need to form a timeline that will leave you enough time to get all of the aspects finished and completed, so you're not rushing on the very last day before you have to give it in on deadline. You need to allocate enough time for the research, for the planning, for the writing, for the editing, for the reading aloud, final edits and proof checking, so that you can get all of that done at least the day before the deadline is. Now, as I said earlier, I think libraries are a bit of a comfort blanket. You can sit there gathering up information for days or weeks. I've seen several students do it for weeks. But you are not expected to distill the last 2,000 years of learning into one 1,500 word essay. All the tutor will expect to see from you is that you have researched diligently, that you've got the relevant series of arguments to form your own conclusion. They're not expecting you to find absolutely everything that's been written about the subject. They want to see that you've got a coherent thought process and that you can logically follow the same argument through an essay. Be kind to your tutors. Don't try to think up the most obscure polysyllabic words which they then have to go to a dictionary to look up. Treat it as though you're explaining a principle to someone who's very much younger than yourself. Deal with short sentences. Deal with shorter words ideally. Keep it all simple so that someone reading through it can follow the flow quickly and easily. Because at the end of the day, your tutor wants to get back to watching Coronation Street or listening to the Archers or whatever it may be. They don't want to be spending all night trying to understand what it was that you wrote. So that's the main message, I think, from this video, is understand all the different aspects you've got to do. Make sure you leave time to do your research, yes, but you need to leave good amounts of time afterwards to go and do the writing, to do the editing, the reading aloud, the final edit, the copy edit, so that everything is in place without stressing yourself, ready for the tutor. Don't think you've got to get every aspect of every atom of information for the last 2,000 years. All you have to worry about is a logical, discrete series of facts, series of steps that take you through to an argument, so that when you're presenting your facts to your tutor, they can see a logical flow. He won't expect to see all the history of the argument going back to the Greeks necessarily. He just wants to see a logical flow that makes sense. So that's about it. I hope that's useful. If it is, do please hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends about it, share it, all that good sort of stuff. If you've got any questions, please put them in at the bottom and I'll be delighted to answer them. And apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.